And the game of the year is... Astrobot!
Fuck you! Fuck you! Damn it. He knew it. That's why he was so miserable.
Yo, the boss was like,
That's
"Get out of
fucking
here."
whack, dog. That's fucking whack. That is fucking whack, bro.
So did Black Myth Wukong deserve Game of the Year? That's been somewhat of a topic ever since the Game Awards aired, amongst other things that people were upset about, namely Astrobot taking home the big prize instead. And so I wanted to discuss the Game Awards as well as Black Myth Wukong with a good friend of mine, Super Metal Dave. And that's what you guys are going to listen to right now. I hope you enjoy. You heard him. Hit the like button and go ahead and let me know what your game of the year was. We're going to let you know ours in the video, but we want to know yours too. And here we go. So I'm here with Super Metal Dave 64, longtime friend of the channel. What's up, Dave?
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. We used to podcast together a few times, talk a lot about YouTube behind the scenes. Longtime friend. Yeah. And so this is cool that we're meeting up for this because we're going to talk about Black Myth Wukong and the Game Awards. So kind of discussed how we're going to get into this. Do we want to start with just the Game Awards and just kind of give overall thoughts on like how we felt about it or what? Want to start with that?
Yeah, sure.
Go for it.
Yeah. For me, I wasn't expecting much this year because of how years past have been. I've been really disappointed in the Game Awards, but people started hyping up the trailers, like beforehand, like, oh, these guys always do that, but like people are like actually serious about it, and then Geoff actually didn't hype it up at all, and then you're like, something's going on here. They got some announcements, I think, this time, and it was the 10-year anniversary of the Game Awards. So yeah, I was actually really, really impressed with the trailers. I liked a lot of them, like the new Onimusha game, Elden Ring, of course, that was awesome. The Ninja Gaiden game coming, like the new Ninja Gaiden looks great.
I forgot about that one. I almost forgot about that. Crazy.
They're bringing back Turok even. I was like, dang, man, like this is like, there's some really good stuff there, and not everything was great. Some of the stuff was not that great, but overall I thought the show was just like really, really good as far as trailers were concerned. Now, for the actual awards, though, this is just my point of view, of course. So the actual awards, I thought were okay.
It's a little messy, though.
Yeah. The whole thing with them having these weird categories, like best ongoing game, and then giving it to a game that's been out for a few, just like this year, like Helldivers 2. And Helldivers 2 should have been a Game of the Year nomination. I'm sorry. Everybody wanted to play it. It was like it was the hottest thing since sliced bread for like a month straight.
Until they nerfed things. Remember, they did like a big nerf on a lot of the stuff, which rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But then they fixed it. So I'm just wondering, is that why it won Best Ongoing? Because they responded in such a way? But it's still silly. I'm with you on that. It's kind of silly that it's even nominated for that. It came out this year, so it's weird.
Yeah, Elden Ring being nominated for Game of the Year, and it's a DLC expansion. That should have been a shoo-in for Best Ongoing Game if you're gonna actually, do it by the time it takes to be an ongoing game, not just release the game and be like, oh, it's Best Ongoing Game. So that was very questionable. And then the actual awards themselves, I thought didn't make any sense as far as like who won certain awards. Like the whole thing for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth winning Best Soundtrack. I mean, like you're giving the game the best soundtrack of the year based on music that's been written and it's been reorchestrated and remastered for this new release, but it's been out for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
That soundtrack.
Like it's nothing new, really.
Yeah. So like I thought Stellar Blade had by far the best soundtrack of the year, in my opinion. I thought it was like fantastic. The music was so varied, very emotional. You got the hard rocking tunes. You got the very like beautiful sweeping tunes with pianos and like
Had like a near vibe
product.
sometimes. Yeah, which was great for me. I
Yeah.
love that. It was good.
And then,
Definitely.
that game didn't even win anything, I don't think. Stellar Blade.
Snubbed. Well, when I was watching the show, I figured, okay, if they don't win Best Action, they're not going to win nothing. That was like the one I thought that they had the best chance to win. Soundtrack, yeah, I love the music, but I was like, that's going to be tougher. I just knew that would be tougher.
Yeah, because
You know,
they did have Metaphor and they did have Final
yeah.
Fantasy, but like, man, you gotta wonder like who's making the judgment calls, because these people that they have, these judges, are just basically like these so-called top journalists that they have, right? So I don't know, man. I was just didn't really think they did a very good job in actually examining why certain titles were deserving of winning certain awards, or titles even belonging in certain categories. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just basic stuff you should get right, and I thought they screwed that up.
I think what bothers me the most about it too is that it gives the impression that there wasn't a lot of games this year. Like almost like they're desperate to put something in there because there's not enough choices or something. Like somebody who's not in the know would look at this show thinking like, is that it? Like, is that the only games? Is Elden Ring
Right.
like just something that was thrown in there because there's not enough? Like it gives that impression when really there was a lot, to put in there, and they just didn't organize it in the way they probably should. So it just seems like games are, in
Yeah.
categories they don't belong in. The categories themselves aren't very clear, or, and we're going to talk about that with Wukong because the CEO over there for Wukong
Yeah.
felt the same way. He's like, well, what's the standards? How do you win Game of the Year? It seemed like he was kind of giving that kind of vibe,
Well, to segue into that though, it's like they nominated Black Myth Wukong for Game of the Year, and they also nominated it for Best Action Game of the Year.
right.
And it won Best Action Game of the Year, correct? Right?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
So, but why did it win Best Action Game of the Year? I don't quite understand that. Is it because what about Helldivers 2? What about Stellar Blade? Um, I mean, not saying it's not a very heavy action game. It kind of is, but it's like also an adventure game, and you do exploring, and it's like it's kind of like Souls Light, Lite. There's like some like Souls stuff in there, but not really. It's like one of those things. But it's like, man, the game was great, but I don't think it was even Game of the Year like material per se. It was borderline, and it wasn't quite enough a variation in the combat for it to be the action game of the year either. Nominated, sure, but like, man,
Interesting.
the
Yeah.
combat in Stellar Blade just like destroys that game. Let's just be honest, you know.
So for those listening, me and Dave, we've talked about Stellar Blade in the past, and when it was out, especially, we were talking about it and how much we loved it. And it's both of our game of the years, right? That's your game of the
Yeah,
year. Yeah, we
that's my
agree
game of
on
the year.
that. It's our game of the year. I do like Wukong. Don't get me wrong. I love Wukong, but I'm sure we could agree the last act of the game kind of dragged it down because, in my opinion, having it go, well, this is a little bit of spoilers for everybody listening and watching. It
And
goes.
we both beat the game,
We beat the
everybody, by the
game.
way,
Yeah, we
unlike
beat the
some people.
game, and we recommend you beat it too. It's a great game. It's just that I felt that the last act was a bit jarring and it dragged because it went from this kind of linear experience, even though there's invisible walls and it kind of looks open world, but it's not because there's those walls or whatever. But in the last act, it goes full blown open world. And so it just
Yeah.
kind of feels out of place, or like it throws off the pacing, and it just kind of doesn't end when I think it should have ended in a way. I felt like the last few bosses, the final boss is great, but the bosses leading up to it, I felt like they could have probably done without it. So in my opinion, it just
Yeah.
felt like it dragged a bit. Whereas with Stellar Blade, I did not want that game to end. I felt it
Right.
was great all the way through. The pacing, the gameplay loops, the action, the mix between the action and the adventure. Because to be fair, like they both have their adventure type of stuff going on too, right?
Sure.
Because there's action, but they also have other stuff. And the Souls light things, we could argue, are in both. So it's, when it comes to Wukong deserving at best action or not, it's like a toss-up for me for both of them. I feel like they both have a good amount of action, and the combat is good in both. But yeah, I just feel like Stellar Blade just edges it out a bit because it's so flashy, it's exciting, and Wukong can be too, but I just felt like Stellar Blade just had that flair, like that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Stellar Blade.
It was just good, and it's got that Sekiro-like timing that you need, and it's such a weird thing to say because as I'm saying it, I feel like Wukong had it too. It's just in a different way, and so deciding between them, it can be tough. But I think at the end of the day, it's like Stellar Blade just did a bit more for me. So I don't know. How do you feel? Do you feel the same or
Yeah,
what?
I feel the same in the sense that Stellar Blade was a more consistent experience, and it was an experience that kept escalating and escalating and escalating until it, it kept trying to outdo itself, and it was doing a great job of it. And in Black Myth Wukong, it was like awesome for the first two chapters, and then chapter 3 was just terrible. It was like the worst.
Dude,
I think chapter 3 was the worst chapter in the entire game.
it was
It was like half
long.
the game.
It was so long. You talking about like
Yeah,
the spider
horrible.
areas and the caves, those areas? I think that's chapter
No,
3, isn't
no,
it?
the ice.
Oh,
the
you're
ice,
right. I
yeah,
think I'm thinking 4. Chapter 3, yeah. I know what
yeah.
you're talking
4
about.
was a little bit better. It had that kind of cool like side boss that I think you missed your first time through.
Yeah.
Because I think Kenny told you to do something else, and you're like, dang it, I missed that boss.
I missed a couple stuff in that game because you know how if you miss something, it'll like throw off the side mission or
Right.
whatever. I did definitely miss a couple things.
Some of the best bosses in Black Myth are the side bosses, and you can
Uh-huh.
totally miss them, which is really lame.
There's so
But
many
like,
bosses too, but go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, Stellar Blade had none of those problems. There was no pacing issues whatsoever. Pacing was absolutely perfect. It was like it really was. It was like so well thought out. They did a great job, and it like intertwined with the story really well. Black Myth Wukong was like it was going great the first two chapters. I'm like, man, this is gonna be my game of the year, like no problem. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, the game just like came to a screeching halt, and the pacing was just god awful for chapter 3.
I could
And
I
it
could see where you're
slowly
coming from. Yeah.
slowly picked up in chapter 4. And I'm like, man, I'm getting like tired playing this game. Like like, when's it gonna be the end coming? And then chapter 5 happened. I'm like, oh, okay, this is way shorter. All right, great, we're picking up again. And then chapter 6, I'm like, what on
Yeah.
earth?
The pacing is kind of wild. Yeah, you're right on that.
Like, what happened? Like, why am I able to do this special ability only in this area, and I can't do it? I can't like go back to the other levels and do this special ability. I'm not gonna say what it is. People spoil it, but it's a cool ability. But like, it's so the game doesn't make any sense in that aspect. Even though it's part of like the lore of the story of Black Myth Wukong, it's part of the whole like mystical like part of the story that you get that ability. But like, they don't really let you use it very much. Only in that one area. Even on New Game Plus, you can't use it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and it
I
does.
remember that.
The game is fun. Is actually more fun, I think, in New Game Plus because you can continue upgrading your abilities, which is great in Black Myth Wukong because that was one issue I had with it was the combat was so limited. Feeling so limited because you're seeing the same exact animation with his staff over and over and over again for the entirety of the game. The first startup animation, and then you can do other stances with your staff and get some other moves
It's
here and
pretty
there.
awesome once you start to actually get those skills and then you can respec
Yeah.
anytime. So like that's what I really loved about the game is that
Mm-hmm.
a certain boss might have certain weaknesses and then you can, tune up to do that and go against those. And then the next boss might be completely different. So you could respec
Yeah.
and have different, strengths and counters towards that boss. So that was, I think,
That
awesome.
was
That was
that was
definitely awesome.
cool.
Because I felt
That was
like
cool.
Wukong overall, like to me, it was a boss rush game
Mm-hmm.
that had how did I used to describe it? I had a way of describing it when I was making the content, but it's essentially a boss rush game, and
Yeah.
getting to those bosses, I thought it's so unique in how it's designed and stuff. And it is true that, yeah, there's these invisible walls, and a lot of people had issues with that. I remember listening to like reviews and stuff at the time, and people would complain about that. And I didn't really complain about it, but then I understood it. I was like, yeah, the more I saw it, the more I was like running into them. I was like, yeah, they're right about this. Like, that's a thing. That's probably an issue. And the more you play and the more you kind of, feel it out, you start to think, yeah, it's a great game, but, the pacing, and you can't really articulate it at the time. You're just playing, right? And you're kind of thinking about it and you're thinking, well, I'm kind of not liking this boss. And then the next one, you're like, this is too long. And then you start to get these kind of feelings as you're playing. Like, you love the game, but something's just amiss. Like, there's something underneath it all that you got to kind of figure out. And then once I beat the game and I hit that last act, I was like, yeah, definitely that killed it for me. like Stellar Blade, I think, is going to be my game of the year. And that's when I was really confirmed, it was confirmed for me at that time.
Yeah, the biggest issue of Black Myth is the inconsistency of the entire game itself. Just the whole structure of the game is inconsistent, and the bosses are inconsistent. And they were doing great in the first two chapters, but after that, that's when it kind of went off the rails, being very inconsistent with the enjoyment of the actual combat with the bosses. And there were some bosses that were just simply designed poorly. Let's just be honest. Like they legit were designed poorly, and they were not fun to fight. And they had like camera issues, and you're getting stuck on objects in the against bosses. Like even final boss, I got stuck on like the ground, on the rocks, on some of the parts because they didn't render it correctly.
Oof. And then not to mention, frame drops being an issue consistently through the game. That was another thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, stuttering was an issue even on PC. I got the most powerful PC and it didn't matter because like it's an Unreal Engine 5 issue. So like, all those things play a part. Stellar Blade, I think, was on Unreal Engine 4, but it didn't have any issues with that because it wasn't pushing like the latest crazy graphics. Like sometimes we just want to have the gameplay, play well first before having to worry about the graphics being totally amazing, which they are, but it didn't have to be like that.
Like they could have tuned it down a bit and then get those frames perfect. They could have done it.
Yeah,
maybe.
In a game like that, you need to have split-second reaction time, and if you have a bit of input delay, which the game did suffer from a little bit, let's be honest, Black Myth, you sometimes you actually wouldn't register your button press. So like I'm like, okay, this is not good. So, and then other moments you're like, wow, when it works, you're like, yeah, this is awesome. This is really, really good. I want the whole game to be like this, So like overall, it definitely it screams of having like first time developer vibes. Like you could tell like these guys, this is their first big game, and they did a fantastic job. But they have a lot of improvement to make for the second game. So no, I can't say this is deserving a game of the year or action game of the year. But a really, really great first attempt, and they have a lot of room for improvement, and I can't wait for the next game, which they're going to do.
Yeah, they're talented over there for sure. Like I'm looking forward to what they do, and they're very vocal about wanting to do more for consoles, more games on console.
Yeah, and yeah, and the game is basically, I think the reason why I got so much praise is because it became a popularity contest. Like it won Game of the Year for the Golden Joystick Awards. Remember that? It's all based on popularity with votes, and it won Player's Choice Award for Game of the Year at the Game Awards. So it's all popularity.
China is a monster, man. Because like remember the sales were going nuts too, and a lot of it was due to China.
Yeah, and some of the art direction in that game is fantastic. They like the vistas and like
Beautiful
when it's hitting
game.
on all cylinders, the game is like a 10 out of 10. But like when it misses hard.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So
That's a good way. That's a good way of putting it because it does have its moments where you're like, wow, this thing is gorgeous and it's performing well for a couple minutes, and then you get that little stutter, or you get the next boss that maybe isn't so hot, and you're like, it just kind of felt inconsistent in that way.
But yeah, I mean, you know what it is too? Like we're so used to playing these like Souls likes where you need to have pinpoint accuracy and pinpoint dodge timing, or your entire run is ruined.
Yeah, you're done.
So like you and I both experienced in Black Myth where we would have to dodge perfectly, and the game would absolutely not let you do that, and you would die every time after you get so far after close to being the boss. And and I feel that's more a fault of the game and not of the player. When the game actually does not register your button press, that's not your fault. I'm sorry. You know,
Yeah.
so like there are certain instances where the game simply would just not did not have the correct timing or input latency that that you need for those type of games. It was asking a lot from you, but not giving you the inputs that you need to be successful sometimes.
Yeah, because that game, I mean, you really got to be on it. You got to execute. Like, it's a big game of execution. And there were so many times, I think I lost count of being so close to beating the boss, literally a hit away, and then I would get killed. And you know how when you play like maybe like a Souls game or something that's very challenging, that'll happen here and there. But I felt like with Wukong, it was happening consistently, like the most consistent in any of my experiences, where I was so close to beating it and I would just get gypped, or like something would happen. I would run out of juice. I couldn't do a skill. You know what I mean? Because it's like you gotta pace yourself. You can't blow everything in the beginning. You gotta pace it and build up those skills and then last the whole match. You know what I mean? So it was it's a demanding game. It's a very skill heavy game, and I made videos about it, about why this game is difficult and stuff. And a lot of people would tell me, well, it's not that hard, get good, they would tell me those things. I'm just like, dude,
Right. Well, it's not really hard.
it's
more
hard
so-
in more like a different way. And I tried to
Yeah.
explain it, but it gets lost in translation at times. But
Yeah,
is what it is.
even Stellar Blade when it first came out, before they patched it, there was a couple instances even in that game where there was some input issues that you're
yeah.
missing some inputs.
I had that too. The
then
demo especially.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. And then they patched it, and I was like, oh wow, it feels way better now. Like there's like a lot more responsive. So like you can kind of compensate for that type of gameplay. Like Liza P has more of a input kind of like designed lag a little bit when you play it. Like there's more like lag in your animations. When it's designed that way, you can definitely adjust to it because the entire game is that way. But when you have instances where it works and then when it doesn't work, that's when it becomes more of a developer fine-tuning thing. And I think that's where they need to focus on for Black Myth Wukong Part 2. Like yeah, they can keep the same engine for the graphics and just like make it run smoother and perfect it, but they need to really hone in on the overall experience and make it more consistent. Cut out a lot of the fluff, make it more direct as far as like how the levels are designed. Just make it consistent, and then make your combat experiences more consistent as well, so you're not fighting against certain aspects of the level or the controls. So you can actually just focus on the boss, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you think about chapter 3, you have the first part of the chapter. You are in, I think, you're in prison, and then you're
Oh,
you gotta
that
get,
part.
yeah, you gotta
Part
get
was
out of this like
crazy.
three levels of prison, and if you fall, and then then you can fall off in that part. By the way,
That level
and
was
other
rough,
parts,
dude. That level was
other parts of
rough.
the game you can't fall off, and all of a sudden you can fall off and die now, and you're like, what? Why does the game do
Yes.
this now to me? Just frustrating stuff like that for no reason. Detracted from the game, and then they could have easily just made chapter 3 into 2 chapters and just made the game 7 chapters instead of 6, and that would have made it feel
could have,
a
yeah.
lot less bogged down and more better pacing, in my opinion.
That brings up a good point, the whole falling sometimes, but other times you don't. And like, or you're walking across a beam. You know how there's like moments like that, you're walking
Right.
across there and you could maybe slip off that because you get hit by an enemy or something. But then later on, you're walking across a bridge or something else and it doesn't happen. And then you got the invisible wall thing. So it's all kind
Yeah.
of tied together where it's inconsistent in what you can expect, because in one instance you can walk through this invisible wall, but then the next one you can't, and you're just like, wait a minute. And then there's no map. Remember, there's
Yep.
no map. And I think that's what really hurt the game. Even when I was playing through it, that was my biggest, I think, complaint, is that it needs a map. I loved the game. I was having a blast, especially at the beginning. Like, we're kind of agreeing on, like, the beginning was going great. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I think this game needs a map, because I'm getting lost. And especially when I got to chapter 3 and chapter 4, I was starting to get more lost. And like I've been seeing the same thing over and over. I'm like, where am I? I'm just going in circles, you know? And then there I am missing potential storylines and side stuff because of that. So it's all connected in the inconsistency of things. I think
But
when we
now,
get down to it, that's the issue, you know?
not only that, but like these invisible walls, I missed so many secrets because of them. Because like,
Right.
oh, this area you can go searching for stuff. Well, how am I supposed to know that? Because everything has been an invisible wall. You can't tell the difference. So it's like
Exactly.
it's like playing like old Doom on, from 1993 or Wolfenstein 3D on PC. You're just like running up to every wall and checking if there's a secret door there. And that's literally what you gotta do in Black Myth Wukong. I mean, that is completely wasting my time. Like that can be easily avoided just by having a map or not having invisible walls like that.
Just a little side map. That's all they needed in the corners. Put a little map right there, you know. But and then have it open up as you see something new. You know, I'm playing Path of Exile right now. When you get to something new, it goes from being all grayed out to showing up, and then it lets you know, hey, this is new. You know, so they could have did something like that. Very easy. It would have avoided a lot of these problems, I think.
That is a great point. Even in Final Fantasy 16, which is not an open world game, it's a very much enclosed type of game, an action focused game. There's a map that shows you where parts are grayed out that you can't go to. And so even if you can go to places, doesn't mean that you can progress in the area because there might be a key to a door you need or stuff like that. So very simple way to fix that, which they didn't do. It just made the game bogged down even more so for the pacing because of that. So yeah, that's why like my final score for Black Myth was basically like an 8 out of 10.
That's a good score. It's fair.
I couldn't say it was 8.5 because there's just a bit too much. There's so many things, so many little things that add up that bring it down notches by notches, So I'm like, yeah, but it's also not a 7 either. So it's like, yeah,
I think
it's pretty darn good for a lot of it.
It's a good score. Yeah, that's a solid score. It's fair because it's not perfect, definitely not perfect, but it stands out as one of the best of the year. I mean, it's definitely up there. Right. It's unique as heck. It's exciting. It was fun. I like the combat. Some of the bosses much better than others, but damn, they were some freaking good bosses. Like I remember having just favorites as I was going, like, oh, that was a great boss. What I really liked about some of them was that they felt super smart, like in the way they countered me. And I would watch their animations as I'm playing, or I'd be watching Kenny play, and I'm just looking at the boss and observing the boss and thinking like, wow, it always felt like these specific bosses, the good ones anyways, it felt like they really wanted to kill me. Like they were trying to stomp on me. If I was near their foot, they would adjust themselves to like turn around and try and, smash me with their foot. They would do things that I felt like they were reacting to what I was doing, if that makes sense. Like they just felt super smart. But then I would fight this other boss that it didn't really feel like that. So even that was a little inconsistent. But man, I did really feel like some of them just really stood out because it felt real, for lack of a better word. Like it felt like a real encounter. Like this thing is trying to kill me big time. Like, and that was awesome to me as somebody who really likes boss fights, of course. I was impressed by that.
Yeah, some of the best moments of the boss fights are when you're in that gamer moment where you're feeling it, right? You're hitting all your perfect dodges. You're getting the cloud step. You're teleporting and you're hitting the guy from behind. You're swiping them and you're doing more perfect dodges. Then you're charging your staff up and you're smashing them. And then you get in there and that's like the funnest combat right there.
Yeah.
And then you're calling on your abilities, your summons creatures and everything, and you're having a great time. But it's when they throw all the other stuff in your way that bogs down your experience, that takes you away from that. That's where it falters.
Yeah. Good.
You just want to get in there. Yeah.
Good game. It's not all bad. I don't want people to think we're completely hating on this game. We love the game. It's just it wasn't perfect. But do we think the game that won deserved it? I just want to touch on Astrobot a little bit because we're talking about Wukong, right? And how technically, like with the frame drops and stuff, no bueno. But when I look at Astrobot and I beat Astrobot, technically, beautiful game. Ran amazingly. Just a beautiful platformer. The music was good. Very fun game. But I'm curious what you think about it winning.
Well, the problem is that I didn't actually play it. I wasn't
Yeah.
interested. But like it definitely looked like a fantastic game. It looked like it was like Mario Odyssey, like Mario like Galaxy, kind of like,
Galaxy, big time. Yeah.
So I didn't see any flaws with the game at all. So I think it was a pretty good pick overall. If it wasn't going to be Stellar Blade, I'm glad that game won. Personally, just because it seemed like a really original, nicely crafted game for everyone to enjoy, and it wasn't DLC, and it wasn't a
It was an Elden
remake
Ring DLC. Yeah. I got to touch on
or
that
Final
too
Fantasy
before we
VII
stop.
remake.
Yeah, we got to talk about that too. A little bit.
Yeah, so Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Elden Ring DLC was nominated for Game of the Year. So I'm glad those two didn't win because it's just like it was bad enough as it was for what they nominated. But yeah, so I was kind of happy for Astrobot if it wasn't going to be Stellar Blade. I didn't think Stellar Blade was going to win, but I thought it should have been at least nominated and didn't even nominate the game. I was like, oh my gosh. This
Yeah,
is
because
ridiculous.
I'm looking at the page again. You know, he had Balatro in there, which I've played. That game is crack. Okay, that game is very addicting. I don't know if it should be in this category, but I guess I could understand it there. And then you had Metaphor, which was another one. I thought, okay, you know, I haven't played it yet, but I know it's, you know, been a big deal, of course. So going into it, the Elden Ring thing, I just want to mention how they added Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree to these categories, and it won nothing. As far as I know, I don't think it won a damn thing, did it?
I don't think so.
So it's kind of, it makes you wonder, and it had me laughing live when I was streaming it. Like, dude, what was the point of adding that in there? Like, it took a spot away from, let's say, Helldivers for Game of
Just
the
want to
Year.
make people angry, I guess.
It could be Stellar Blade in there. It could be Helldivers. It could be something else that we know was a
Yeah.
phenomenon of the year and deserves to be mentioned at least. And it's like, and I love Elden Ring. So, I mean, if it's coming from me, you know it's coming from the heart. Like this game, I love the DLC,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't have been in there. It shouldn't
I mean,
have.
why didn't Bloodborne's DLC get nominated for Game of the Year? Well, it's because
Right.
it wasn't a new game. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, and that you can use that on any game. Like people bring up The
Right.
Witcher a lot. They bring up The Witcher and that DLC, and you got these other games that have expansions that are huge and stuff, and they do really well. And I know Shadow of the Erd Tree it did crazy. It sold really well. It did, you know, numbers, Metacritic, and all that.
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
but I mean, being fair, if we had to be fair, it probably shouldn't have been in there. Like, and especially the fact that it didn't win anything. So it was like, okay, what was the point of that? You know, they could have
Yeah,
had something else in there.
you add into the fact where they cut off the dates for mid-November,
Right.
and Indiana Jones should have been nominated for Game of the
Could have
Year
been in
as
there.
well.
It could have been. I
And
know you're playing it, right?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great game. It definitely should have been nominated for Game of the Year. And you know, and so take away Elden Ring, put Indiana Jones in there, change the dates to mid-January to do the Game Awards instead of early December, and then Game Awards would be a lot better. But like they are ruled by advertising dollars, and it's really sad that these developers are getting snubbed because they can't get their game out before November 15th due to that. So
There's been a lot of instances of that, like the past years. I remember there were certain games that would come out later, and then it's not going to count.
Jedi Fallen Order.
Jedi
that
was
a good
one.
example.
I remember Smash being one. I was like, wow, no Smash,
Mm-hmm.
because that came out in like December or something. And you know, there's just always been some game that comes out in December and it has no chance of getting in there. And then the next year,
Yeah.
they're not going to remember. Nobody's going to remember it, and it's not going to get nominated. So
No game has
Yeah.
ever won anything really that has been nominated for the previous year. Like I think they
Right.
tried to nominate Smash Brothers. I don't think it won though.
I think it
I
got
don't
in
know,
there
they-
for like Family Game or something, but
Yeah,
it wasn't Game
yeah.
of the Year.
Exactly.
I
But like
know.
Jedi Fallen Order in 2019, that should have been a Game of the Year nomination, and it missed
Yeah.
it by like 1 week. It
I
was
think
like late
yeah, I
November.
remember that year. I know Sekiro won it, which I was happy with, but yeah, Jedi I think should have been nominated for something. For
Yeah, and
in
it totally
there.
was forgotten about the next year. I'm like, dude, you guys. I mean, this is just lame.
It's crazy. But yeah, with these awards and stuff, I mean, they're probably never going to be perfect. I did think this year was much better than last year, and
Yeah.
previous years that I could remember. And, you know, I was thinking about it like, yeah, the show was much better. That's how I felt. Anyways, I thought
Yeah, it was better paced. Yeah.
yeah, the pacing. I liked how Jeff with the Muppets and all that was like throwing shots at Jeff, and he had that sense of humor to make fun of himself and make fun of the show. I thought that was good. He should do more of that, because he's gonna get criticized no matter what. So he might as well have some fun with it, and you know, kind of take the high road and laugh at himself. I thought that was great. And then you know, less cringe. I felt there wasn't really anything that was too cringy. The announcements were good. You know, obviously Elden Ring was in there, so of course I was like hype. That was great. That co-op game that's going to be sick next year. So there's a lot to look forward to, and I think this Game Awards did a good job of like getting us hyped for next year. I think that was good.
Yeah, overall it was an improvement over last year's Game Awards. I think a lot, but yeah, they really need to work on how they nominate the games though. They need to make another adjustment. Hopefully they don't make this a habit, you know.
Yeah, because I said this in a video when I was talking about Elden Ring, the DLC being nominated. Like, what are they going to do now? Because now you're either going to have to abide by this and include other DLCs, or you're not going to do that, and then you're going to get called out for that because you just did it for Elden Ring, and then now you're not going to do it for nothing else. You know, it's just kind of I feel like they're between a rock and a hard place now with that.
Yeah.
It's going to get more messy, and it's like, what are they going to do? So I don't know. Maybe they'll learn from their mistake and go for it.
But like when you think about it, Black Myth Wukong, it sold over 30 million copies. It won Game of the Year for Player's Voice and Game of the Year for the Golden Joystick. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it didn't win for the Game Awards for Geoff Keighley, but hey man, I think he has a huge foundation to build upon, and I can't wait for their next game's probably going to be like amazing, like even better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So
he's
got nothing to be worried about.
Oh yeah, like definitely. You mentioned this earlier, but this being their first big game like this, because they only did mobile before, right? Am I right on that?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So first game that's like on console, on PC like this, and to have it do this well, despite frame drops and despite being inconsistent with things, and it's still, you know, is held in very high regard, that's a win. And I feel like, yeah, they'll from here on get even better. The only place they can go is up, right? I hope. Yeah,
you know, and kudos to their the one big thing I do hope that they build upon with their next game is the creature system that they had going. Like you can get so many different creatures to use as summons.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
I really think that was very innovative for that type of game. I don't think I've played a game that's ever been like that before. So I think personally, I don't know if I've played a game like that, but like, because there are so many different ones you can be in that game.
With this game, there's so many, but I know I've played, like, the ones that come to mind is like Neo and Wulong. You can use like spirit animals and use them to fight for you and stuff like that. So, but it wasn't nearly, it wasn't even close to how many are in Wukong. That's my point. Like Wukong had a lot, but you know, it's funny. I mostly used the same one. The guy with the big head. I just used him like crazy because he did crazy damage and all that. But it was cool to try the different ones out, and they all had their different, you know, abilities and stuff. And they came in like a solid character that came in, whereas with like Wulong and Neo and stuff, that's more of like a spirit and more of like they just whoosh in real quick and then leave kind of thing.
So I hope they build upon that idea, and also I hope that they along with that perhaps bring some of those abilities to your main character that you can upgrade as well, to like add on to your main character, so you're not just using the other character for a split, you know, like for like 10 seconds or whatever it is, 15 seconds. I think they could possibly modify that a little bit to make it more balanced, to give your own character a sense of more like big power gains throughout the game, besides give them the, you know, the monkey just crazy ability at the very end, you know, for no reason seemingly.
Definitely to do
but
that. Yeah man, we said this is going to be like 15 minutes, you guys listening. I'll probably edit it down. I know we can, but it was fun. I definitely wanted to discuss this game and the awards with you, Dave, because I know we kind of were on the same page having Stellar Blade at the top and then Wukong at the bottom. Well, not the bottom, but just below it. And so I wanted us to just kind of hash that out. Like, why is that? You know? So I think us talking about it, I think we kind of got our points across and we agreed on most things. But
Sure.
other than that, man, how's your channel going? You want to give your details, how people can find you and all that stuff?
Yeah, you come check me out. I cover lots of tech stuff on my channel. Super Metal Dave 64, tech stuff with Switch 2 and Metroid Prime 4, Metroid Prime in general, and I also have a second channel that's linked there as well that just passed 1,000 subscribers. Hey, so I got two channels now with over 1,000. That was like one of my goals this year to hit
awesome.
1,000 on my second channel. But yeah, I've been around since 2010 doing YouTube. I think Erica also has been around since then.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're OGs. So yeah, come check us out if you haven't already, and I'm sure you'll like it.
Yeah. I'm sure you were like me, starting very slow. I mean, like that's how I started. I had like a couple videos a year or something like that, and then just gradually went over time. Yeah.
Random gameplay clips. So that's what we always just did back in the day.
Yeah. I really appreciate Dave. For everybody listening, like me and Dave, we've been friends for a while, and we talk about YouTube stuff. He kind of keeps me grounded when it comes to certain YouTube things and how to work the algorithm and all that. Like we've had those discussions and talked about that stuff, and it's been very helpful for me and my channel. So yeah,
Congrats
I definitely
on 20K, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, like I always tell you, you're part of the reason it got this far, because obviously we all need our little support systems and people who relate, and you've always been kind of that friend that I could just talk YouTube with, and so it's helped a lot with the channel. So thank you, of course.
It's always a lot of fun talking just honestly about games and not having to worry about someone being fake. I mean, that's that's what guys listening out there in YouTube land and in the comments. If you want someone who's real and honest about gaming opinions, definitely, subscribe to Erica. She's never, been fake about her content. That's what I love about her channel all these years. It's just very, very honest. And that's what you want. You want someone who's going to be honest about their gaming. You don't want to be led down the wrong path.
I appreciate that. That means a lot, because that's really what I aspire to do. Is just I would be the worst liar. It's too hard to keep up with the lies. like I just figure you got to be honest. It's much easier, right? Just to play the games, say what you think, and stand by it. Boom, that's it. And so,
and that's usually what people want, but it's hard to find someone who actually fulfills those needs because they're always out to get something else from the viewer, basically your click, or to follow a trend to make something sound like it's bad or something like that, because that's what everyone expects you to say. So like Erica, guys out there, Erica is not afraid to go against the trend if she wants to, because that's what her heart tells her to do. And that's what being honest is all about, that's what we strive for here. So
for sure. Yeah, these are the things we talk about, you guys. One of these days we should dive more into that. We could talk for days just about that kind of stuff, because
there's so many examples.
We relate on that a lot. Like Dave is someone else I look to as well, who like just gives his opinions, and that's how he feels. He's gonna say it, and it's the best way to go. We agree on it's the best way to go, because we keep it gaming and we stay true to what we want to do, and we don't let anyone else, change that. And that's the best part, because when you actually do get successful, like you got your second channel, you got over 1,000 subs now, and you did that your own way, and that's the best feeling. Like you didn't, like you said, you weren't following trends, you weren't lying, you weren't doing something to appease of a fan base. You just did your thing, and people freaking followed it, and that's the best feeling. So
yeah, just stay in your lane and do what you do. Focus on what you're good at. I mean, that's like what the best advice for YouTube is, for anybody doing YouTube, is just focus on what your passion is, and eventually you'll get a following. It may take longer, sure. It's not like a golden ticket. It's going to take you a while to gain a fan base, but like once you do, like when you get 20,000 subscribers, like Erica has, it's a great feeling, because she did it all her way. She's not selling herself out for some other purpose.
Perfectly said. perfectly said. Thanks, Dave, and thanks for hanging out. This was fun. And we got to do it again. So if you guys enjoyed this, you want to hear more from us, I mean, I'm sure we'll have a game that we both play. We could discuss it later. There's going to be a lot coming out 2025. I'm excited. Yep. So yeah, we'll definitely have to
Thank you.
Do this again for sure. Thank you. And that's it. Thank you guys for watching. And I will catch you in my next video. And you can catch Dave on his channel. I'll put his links in the description and all that stuff. So thank you for listening and watching. And we will catch you later.